Thanks for joining us, everybody. My name is Matthias Kuhn from John Cipollone's, and we're going to take about 20 minutes or so to go over some indoor air quality products that Aprilaire has that will help improve our indoor life, both safety as well as health. Um, so we in today's world, everybody's at home. The whole world is wearing masks to stay healthy, to protect us from today's conditions, which is great. But most of our houses do not get as much attention as they should. So we're going to try to figure out how some of the Aprilaire products can help us essentially put a mask around our homes and keep everybody in our families and in our homes more safe as well as healthy. So currently we are spending a ton of time at home. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, indoor air is up to 5 times more dirty than outdoor air. So if we think about that, I mean, that's pretty significant. Outside there are pollen, there's smog, there's dust. And if our homes are 5 times more dirty than that, then we're not living a very healthy and clean life inside. So, and I mean, some of the reasons for dirty air inside is essentially closed windows, especially in the middle of the wintertime. Dirty air filters, ductwork. Just the age of the houses have a lot to do with them, a lot to do with it as well. Houses in our area are, most of the houses are built pre-1950s, 1960s. So that has something to do with it. So, looking at some of the key aspects to help us clean the air, there are essentially 4 steps to clean and healthy indoor air quality. So I'm going to be referring to indoor air quality as IAQ throughout this presentation. That's what it stands for, indoor air quality. And the 4 main ingredients of that are fresh air ventilation, which is basically bringing fresh air into our homes. Number 2 is filtration. So that can be achieved with air filters. Number 3 is humidity control, so either adding or removing humidity. And number 4 is air purification, so introducing oxidizing agents to help us clean the air inside of our homes. The first aspect is fresh air ventilation. So this is either done naturally or it's done in via mechanical devices. So to start with the first aspect, naturally, that's just the homes naturally draft. So hot air rises, pressure rises up in our homes, escapes out the attics, and as the pressure in the house drops, that pressure comes back in through basements, through leaky windows, through doors. So houses tend to draft naturally. Now, newer homes, 2000, built 2000 and later, those homes are a lot tighter these days. Fresh air ventilation actually became part of the code to help with that, to help dilute some of that bad air inside the home. So the 3 effects of fresh air ventilation essentially is remove pollutants, get stale and dirty air outside, bring fresh air in. It helps save some energy just by ventilating, and it can also help reduce some humidity in the house. A way to think of natural ventilation is, back 2 years ago when the Comcast Center was being built downtown. They had plastic wrapped around the entire building. And if you looked at that, I don't know how 80 stories or 70 stories or whatever it is, the first 20 or 30 stories with that plastic was really sucking in. and the top 30 floors of that building was essentially like a bubble, kind of like a balloon. It was, the air as it was rising was trying to get out. And that's a very good picture as far as what natural ventilation is. An interesting fact about considering we're in this big pandemic. Back in 1918 with the Spanish flu, the cure for that happened to be fresh air, and all of the New York City apartment buildings that are probably still there, they actually sized heating systems to heat the houses with every single window open. I mean, some of those buildings are, 20, 30, 80 stories tall. And to be able to open all the windows and still be able to heat that building, I mean, that's incredible. So, that's essentially how they were able to beat the Spanish flu back then. So fresh air ventilation is key in just our health as well as our home's health. Essentially, the benefit of a mechanical induced system or mechanically induced ventilation system it helps dilute the dirty air in the house. So again, as pressure goes up in a house, as pressure decreases in a house, that pressure has to be made up. So pressure always wants to go from high pressure to low pressure. So again, as we're bringing fresh air into the house, because now we're at a higher pressure than outside, that pressure from inside the house wants to go to the outside because it's lower pressure outside. So that forces some of those stale and dirty air outside because the mechanical ventilation system is bringing that fresh air inside. So a good way to think about mechanical ventilation is if you have a glass of water, and if that water is dirty or muddy, and you have some holes in the side of that glass, and you continuously can introduce fresh water from a spigot, eventually that water is going to run completely clean because it's just flushing out that all that mud and all that dirt. So that's essentially what a fresh air ventilation system does. And if you look at some of the Aprilaire products, if one of those ventilator runs for 20 minutes, an hour, it will actually clean the house over 7 times a day. It's pretty powerful stuff as far as just getting more healthy. The second aspect to IAQ is essentially air filtration. So that is changing air filters, whether you have a 1-inch filter or whether you have some of these high-end filters. Clean filters is one of the easiest ways to maintain healthy air. And air filters are measured in a MERV rating. What MERV stands for is a minimum efficiency reporting value. Essentially, it's a way to measure how big of a particle a filter can remove out of the airstream. So most 1-inch filters, probably 75% of homes have 1-inch filters. Most of those filters are somewhere between a 1 and an 8 MERV rating. So when you look at a MERV rating, if you look at the chart here on the right-hand side, the MERV ratings corresponds to particle sizes. So the lower the MERV rating is, the less smaller particles a filter can catch. So, particles are measured in microns, and micron is just a measure. It's just a measurement, kind of like foot or yard. But essentially, a micron is a millionth of a meter. So pretty small stuff. And if we look at, that average 1-inch filter, between 1 and 8 MERV rating, they're going to be able to filter out somewhere between 20 and 85% of particles that are 3 to 10 microns. To give you an idea of what that means is a human hair, for instance, is somewhere around 70 microns. The human eye can see somewhere around 40 microns. Bacteria is somewhere between 0.2 and 3 microns. So, if we're not filtering out any bacteria until you get to about 10 MERV rating. So the 1-inch filters don't really do that good of a job at filtering, bacteria or anything like that, or even smaller particles for that matter. So again, MERV, the higher that rating is, the smaller particles it can catch. This is a chart. I thought this chart was very good because that first white column is kind of dust efficiency. So again, residential, or the majority of homes have 1-inch filters at 1 through 8 rating, MERV rating. It's filtering somewhere between 0 and 60% of the dust. Obviously not 0, but less than 20%. So, it does okay once you start getting into some of the, better MERV ratings. But really, 60% of dust is, it's okay. It's not great. Once we get into some of the higher MERV ratings, that 13 to 16 MERV ratings, we're basically, you're starting to get into smoke removal. A lot of those types of filters are used in hospitals, in surgery rooms. So, you start to get pretty efficient at filtering stuff. If you start getting some of the good residential filters, you're starting at 9, 10 MERV. those are very, very good filters. So this is kind of a chart to give you a rough idea on that. Some interesting facts about air filtration is essentially one of the best filters that you can get. Aprilaire makes a MERV 16 filters, and those are by far some of the best filters out there. When you start getting into that 16 MERV, there's a couple of other things you have to consider, like airflow, because the filter is so good at filtering out stuff. Air also has a harder time flowing through those filters. So usually once you get into that, you have to start taking some airflow measurements. So it's not as simple as, hey, let's take this filter out and put a 16 MERV 16 filter in here. However, MERV 13 is very, very compatible, is very, very close to a MERV 16, and that 13 filter, will do a very, very good job, as we've seen from some of these charts. The other interesting fact is running a blower on either air conditioning or heating system, or if your system's combined, that's all the same blower. Running that continuously for an entire day can actually filter the air up to 30 times a day, which is very, very powerful. So our standard filters, when we install the new equipment, is this filter that you see on the right here. This is a Aprilaire filter cabinet. It can accept multiple filters, anything from MERV rating 10 up to that 16 range. And again, that 16 range can capture up to 90% of viruses and airborne contaminants. Viruses are very, very small. As you can, and if you look down, middle of the paragraph, viruses are between 0.06 and 0.14 microns, and the filter will catch about 90% of that. So 16 MERV, great filter. The next item is humidity control. In my opinion, this is one of the best ways to improve indoor air quality. Essentially, humidity control is currently, we're in the wintertime, so now we're talking about adding moisture to the air. In the summertime, you're talking about removing moisture. But if we just focus on adding humidity to the airstream, our ideal climate to live in, humans are naturally the most comfortable in 50% humidity level. Now, in the wintertime, it's very, very hard to maintain. In the summertime, we try to get to that number as close as we can, either with just an air conditioning system or a dehumidifier. But essentially, humidity is something that makes our body feel warmer. So according to Aprilaire, for every 4 degrees that we can increase humidity levels in our homes, it's almost the same as raising the thermostat 1 degree. So if you keep your thermostat at 66 degrees and the humidity level in the house is 16%, if you add a humidifier and you can get that level up to 32%, a 16% increase in humidity level, that's 66 degrees that the thermostat is reading. Because you're adding humidity into the house, will almost feel like it's 70. So it is a tremendous way to make us feel warmer, but also healthier. So low humidity, it can cause bloody noses, it can cause dry skin, it can cause sickness. So it's a very, very good way to stay healthy. Our skin, when it's moist, or at least not dry, will maintain our body's heat much, much better. Some interesting facts about humidity is, one of the primary defenses of our body is the mucous membrane. So which is a sticky membrane, and it helps keep tissues moist, as well as it traps dust, bacteria, and viruses. So again, ideal humidity for us is 50%, 45 to 55%. So the closer we can get to that, the better our mucus will help protect our body. Also, viruses and bacteria are less easily transferred in a moist environment. Again, 40 to 60% is ideal. That's kind of a healthy area. If you're below that, a humidifier will help tremendously. If the climate is above that, a dehumidifier or your air conditioning system might be able to get down to that range. So there's kind of two ways to attacking the humidity levels depending on what season we're in. The fourth part of IAQ is air purification. What air purification is, it is essentially something that is added to ductwork or just a house in general, and it introduces oxidizing agents to help clean the indoor air as well as surfaces. So oxidizing agents are something like hydrogen peroxides. Air scrubber, which is what we installed, they have what they call their active pure technology. I believe the first time it was used was in space, but it's essentially that type of technology is proven to kill pathogens as well as contaminants. So what does an air scrubber do? An air scrubber helps eliminate some of the triggers of allergies as well as asthma. As I said, it uses their active pure technology. It also removes VOCs. So VOCs are volatile organic chemicals. They exist in anything you bring into or most things that you bring into your house. So if you have renovations done, drywall is basically chemicals, right? Well, when that stuff is installed, it off gases. So it lets these organic chemicals, they basically escape the drywall and they end up in your house. When you get a fresh paint job, that paint off gases, let some of those chemicals out into your house. When you install new carpets, same thing. When you bring furniture in, same thing. So that's, that's one of the most powerful things that the air scrubber does by removing those VOCs. It also just helps protect the heating and cooling system from, just essentially contaminant buildup, and clean surfaces, which is huge. I mean, if we think about how often we touch surfaces or who touches surfaces, maybe kids with dirty hands will touch them, or doorknobs, light switches. The air scrubber helps clean all those. The oxidizing agents help kind of neutralize that stuff and help clean all those bacteria. Some of the studies that the air scrubber has done is essentially in lab settings, but this is a graph of these, all these little things that you see on the right-hand side, like hepatitis and swine flu, bird flu, strep. It was basically, they put all these viruses up against their active pure technology, and it essentially reduced the microbe reduction in all that was essentially almost 100% in all of these items within 24 hours. I mean, if you look at that chart, you're reducing almost 90% of the microbes within 6 hours, and then it takes another 18 hours or so to kill the rest. So it's very, very powerful stuff that these guys have. This is a measurement of the reduction in airborne contaminants of air conditioning systems, or heating and air conditioning systems, with just the filter. So the two lines that you see on the right-hand side is just with a filter after 30 minutes. And that little blue line, or that little blue graph, is essentially air scrubber was installed into the ductwork, and they let that run. So, a filter is basically removing somewhere around 10% of contaminants in the airstream. Once an air scrubber was installed, within 30 minutes, you're reducing close to 90% of any of those contaminants that is in the airstreams. This is a study they did in Indiana schools, and kids that were calling, that essentially got the flu, or were either didn't show up to school or had to leave school because of the flu. So in the first 3 months of school, before they introduced the air scrubber, there were 158 cases of either kids calling out because of the flu, or being dismissed. After that technology was introduced into their HVAC systems, those cases dropped to about 34. So it's more than 80% reduction in flu dismissals. I mean, if you think about that for kids in schools, I mean, that's it's pretty important. I mean, flu is you can be home with the flu for a week, few days. So that's a lot of school that kids could be missing. So all of these things that we've talked about, we essentially offer in packages. We have most of our packages. We have 3 different packages. All of the packages include an air filter as well as a air scrubber. So if we look at that elite package, those are basically an air scrubber, which is what reduces the odors, cleaner surfaces, reduces allergens, kills RNA viruses, and then the improved filtration capabilities, essentially installing a better filter and all associated ductwork. The ultimate package, basically that same thing, air scrubber and filters, as well as a bringing in fresh air mechanically. And then the deluxe package, essentially adding a humidifier. So all of these issues that we've talked about, or all of these solutions that we've talked about, can be included. Now, these can certainly be installed at different, individually. We just have packages that kind of makes it easier. So to give you a overview of what these packages include, again, the Elite is air scrubber with a filtration system. The Ultimate is essentially adds on the Aprilaire fresh air ventilation system. And the Deluxe would add in a Aprilaire humidification system. So that is all I have to go over. I'd like to open it up to any questions that anybody may have, or anything, anything you guys would like to ask. Let me see.
I have a question, Matthias.
Yes.
So this is very informative. Thank you. In fact, it's so much information. I was wondering, what should I do? Should I set up an appointment with you to talk about it, just about our house and what would be the best system for us?
Yeah, that's probably going to be the easiest. We can look at we have to see how we can install it anyway. But yeah, there's a lot of information here, and most likely making an appointment is probably the best thing to do to be able to get a little bit more information and see what we can do and how we can do it.
Okay, great. I'll do that. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, this is Pat Wexler. These filtration systems, they work with any heating systems. I have oil heat, and I have an older home, which is very poorly insulated. So I kind of constantly have fresh air coming in and out any time of the year.
Yep.
My main concern, I like the idea of the air scrubber because I have just a ton of dust in the house all the time when the heat is on. And I'm not a big air conditioner user. I usually have my windows open during the summer and the warmer weather. Okay. But yeah, that was my more about, the contaminants coming in through the system and whatnot, especially in the wintertime.
Yep. Yeah, it will work with so when you say oil heat, I'm assuming you have vents that the heat comes out of it, or do you have radiators?
No, I have vents.
You have vents. Yeah, okay, so as long as you have vents, all of this stuff will work. If you have only radiators, so most houses that have radiators have some sort of system, maybe up in the attic that does air conditioning. Obviously, those are vented. So we can work with that, but if your heating and cooling comes out of the same vents, all this stuff is applicable to your system itself. Now, again, every house is unique, so I can't say that one of these packages is right for every single house. But yes, in your case, these things will work with what you have.
Okay. And I have another question, whether it's something that you could do or Cipollone does. I have never had my ductwork cleaned. I've been in the house 40 years. And is that something that needs to be done on a regular basis? I'm assuming probably yes.
Yeah, it should. So we don't do duct cleaning. I can give you some recommendations.
That would be great. Yeah.
You can you can either email me. You can call me. I think my email might be in that top corner or the email on here. I can also call you. I can give you that information. We have a couple companies we work with.
Okay.
As far as their recommendation is usually every 3 years.
Okay.
It will help. My recommendation is usually if you buy a new house, do it immediately.
Right.
After that, it's basically your own dust. Mm-hmm. But again, I think for your health, it's probably better to do.
Okay.
Every 3, maybe 5 years.
All right. And does that air scrubber go in like by every duct that comes out, or is that something that would be down in the basement with the unit, the heater or air conditioning unit?
That's a great question. Yep. Yeah, that's going to be down in the basement. It's going to be near the opening of your HVAC system. So if you have an oil heater, there's going to be a cooling coil on top of that, and basically right at the outlet of that, where the airstream is most powerful, that's where we install this.
Okay.
And it's essentially a little honeycomb bulb that needs to be changed every couple of years. and the air flows through that honeycomb, through that filtering comb, essentially, picks up those oxidizing agents, and then it brings it through the house. It travels through the ductwork, and then each individual run that goes to the bedrooms, living room, dining room, kitchen, stuff like that. That's essentially where it all comes out and just goes to work.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? All right. Well, I wanted to thank everybody again.
Let me also just let everybody know that after this, I will be sending an email to everybody with a copy of this recording, just in case you wanted to go check anything back out again. And you'll have a link in there to go back to the website, and you can make an appointment
Okay,
and all that as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank
Very
Thank you,
welcome. Thank you
Matthias.
all for coming. This was
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks for the
Appreciate your time.
presentation. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.